I'm Kelton. I'm also known as Kelton FX online, and I'm a special effects and beauty makeup artist. I've done a lot of work on like music videos as well as commercials. My most recent work being work on Kanye West's Famous. I worked on a lot of silicone bodies and did patching and free sculpting. And also at BlizzCon last year, I wore the male character costume and placed fourth in the contest.
I'm Melanie. I go by Deela Designs. I have my own clothing line that circles around the fashion of nerdom. And then I do a lot of like cosplay mashups, and I do a lot of redesign in my own work. I don't do a lot of like very specific work. So I do a lot of Assassin's Creed mashups and do things more like high couture kind of cosplay where it's like ball gowns, but meshing things together.
Okay, so first we're going to go into kind of talking about what designer cosplay means, what it is. Does anybody here, just show of hands real quick, like have a concept of like what we're talking about when we say designer cosplay? Anybody have like a rough idea? A couple people, a few people. So when we say designer cosplay, basically we're referring to cosplay that takes kind of a unique take on an existing character, or is a specific version or unique vision of a style. For example, like you'll have certain things that are kind of contained within the idea of designer cosplay, like gender-bent costumes, costumes where you take a character and put it into a different genre or a different time period, and it can get pretty diverse in terms of like the scope of what that means. But we'll get into that a little bit here at the panel. So first of all, like we want to kind of try to emphasize that it's something that anybody can do. This is not something that you need to have like a degree in design or a degree in history or even just a degree in casting, crafting, or anything art related. It's something that pretty much anybody can pick up and just through practice get into, and it's really helping cosplayers to kind of distinguish themselves in a sea of faces that otherwise would be the same costume that they're wearing. It's giving people an opportunity to really kind of set themselves aside and show, this is my unique version of a character. I don't know if you guys had any more to add about that.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, cosplay is obviously for anyone, but like I'm entirely self-taught. Like I was sewing when I was younger and I gave it up for a while, and then I was introduced to cosplay, and everything I do is self-taught, and the internet is such a great resource because you can learn anything, and then you make great friends and they help you along the way. So it doesn't matter, everyone, it's really for everyone.
For me, when I started, I was really strict with myself, so I always wanted to be 100% down to the original character design. But eventually I discovered that there's a lot more to that. It makes you more creative when you're making your own design. And people can look at it and be like, oh, so this is this character, but I see influences from this place and that, And when you create your own costumes, you always want to keep parts of the original character in the design so that people look at it, they can tell immediately. I don't know, the bow in their hair, or like the type of fabric you use, that's the character that you're trying to cosplay, but it's your own version.
So, I mean, one thing that we want to kind of talk about a little bit is that, you're already seeing a lot of influences of, unique takes on characters in major games and in comics as well. So, for example, skins in games. It's exactly what we're talking about, where a company will say, okay, well, here's a character, but here's a unique skin of that character, so that you can kind of reimagine them in a different context. I kind of feel like doing designer cosplay stuff kind of starts to influence people in comics and people making the games to push their designs further as well, because they see these fans that are like creating these amazing versions of these characters, and they're like, hey, I can do that too. and then we get awesome skins.
Yeah, I feel like companies definitely have been pushing it more with like Overwatch has 1 million skins and Assassin's Creed has 1 million skins, and that's the thing is they want you to cosplay these things and bring new designs to because it helps their company. So.
And so like what Kelton was talking about earlier, where it's important to start thinking about things that make a character unique. So one of the best ways to start is you choose a character that you really like. And then you think about, okay, well, what can I do to kind of change this character in a way so that they're still recognizable as the character, but there's something that nobody's ever seen before. So you have to pick and choose elements of their design, you know, whether it be a color palette or certain repetitive shapes or texture, and you incorporate that in so that you can tag the character. But at the same time, you choose, okay, well, what can I change? What can be added? What can we take away from this? So Kelton's been really, really great with that, for example.
I know we don't have visual aid, but I had, so I hope you can see. Last year I made a redesign of Poison Ivy, so it's a gender bent Poison Ivy, and I kept things like her red hair. Sorry, I kept things like her red hair and the leaves on her costume, and I made the skin green, and also incorporated some of the Venus flytraps, but kind of like Little Shop of Horrors Marjorie too. So it's things like that. People look at it. It's not 100% like the original Poison Ivy, but when you look at it, you can tell from the color palette, from the choices of props and everything, that that is the character that they're trying to represent.
Yeah, your choices in fabrics or textures or, you know, just little things. For example, I do Assassin's Creed mashups. I did an Assassin's Creed Link. I did an Assassin's Creed Kylo Ren. And it was all about what shapes you want to keep, what shapes are important to that character, and what shapes are important to the other things so they will breathe with a mashup. Because if you don't have the right textures and color palettes, so Link, I obviously went green, but I kept the shape of like an Assassin's Creed hood, and I kept I had hidden blades, and I also had a sword, which it's a little overkill on the weapons, but
Never.
It made sense. You have to have a master sword if you're Link. So you do a lot of reference searching. It's so much reference searching. I would say 90% of what my cosplays are, it's all research. So, you know, it's getting the right color palettes, it's getting the right shapes, it's researching fabrics or armor and how you need to paint it to make the character read, because that's the most important part. You want people to know who you are. So you have to find the right references. And there's a lot of trial and error. You're not going to get it right on the first time.
Yeah.
I've thrown away thousands of dollars of supplies, and it's, you know, and you kind of want to cry a little on the inside when you do that, but it's necessary. It's you don't get things right always on the first time.
Never start without a solid design in mind, because you don't want to start on something like, oh, I don't like this, and then you end up wasting like a whole yard of fabric. So
You mean having it done like paper?
right? I mean, like when you don't start making your costume without like a proper design.
Right.
Yeah. So like, I mean, everyone does it differently. For those of you who can't draw, you can do things like mood boards. You know, put fabrics together on a page, and so you lay things out so you know how it looks together. You don't have to do a sketch if you want, or you could hire people to design fabrics. You know, so there's many different ways to get started.
Yeah, and I mean, like going back to what Mel said, it's about picking the things that make people immediately think of the character. Yesterday, I don't know, I'm assuming most of you know who Jessica Negri is. She was wearing a design that I collaborated with her on. It was an armored necromancer version of Totoro. Now that's way outside the box of what most people are kind of comfortable with. It's like, where did you even come up with that? And she's kind of off the wall. So she came to me and she was like, I want to do a necromancer Totoro. I'm like, I don't even know what that would look like. So it took a lot of push and pull. And like, so we looked at Totoro and we're like, okay, well there's gray fur, so that's got to be in it. There's like these little boomerang shapes that he's got on his belly. That has to be in it because that's vital to his design. The shape of his ears need to be there. And then you look at, okay, well, you know, necromancers in like Diablo 2 or you know, where do you pull in elements of that? Okay, well there's skulls, there's kind of these wooden textures. So it's all kind of just trial and error. We tried a bunch of different textures and colors and color combinations and ideas. And a lot of it, you know, when you collaborate with somebody, you get to bounce ideas back, back and forth. Like she would say, okay, well, what about these like leaf textures or feathers? Can we add that? Or I want that flute that he has in the movie. So things get added, and you take certain things out, you change colors, and then once you've got the design down to exactly what you feel like is perfect in your mind when you think of the idea that initially came to mind. Then you start crafting, you start sourcing materials, like Mel said, and you find exactly what's going to help bring that to life. Well, no, I mean, we can I think we're still yeah, sourcing materials, like we said, craft stores are amazing. Sometimes you can actually pull inspiration for an idea just by taking a visit to a craft store without anything in mind, just being like,
you see a fabric, you're like, oh, I want that.
and sometimes that will inspire, like, this would be great for this, and it kind of makes you start thinking about it. And I mean, I'm thinking about things months in advance. A lot of it doesn't come to life, but like you want to be inspired by your project, really. So you want to be passionate about the characters you're representing, because if you're not, it's probably just not going to come to where you want it to be.
And it'll show through in your design.
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, because you'll end up tossing things that are important to the character, because to you, they may not be.
Yeah,
but to everyone else.
The silhouette of the character is important. Even if you're doing like a ball gown version of a certain character, like the silhouette, if they have like a headpiece, that's a vital part of the character. You have to keep that in there, or people will be like, "What is this?"
Right. Or some, I mean, the balance on things. It's a lot like tuning a radio to your favorite station. You have to kind of like, if it's fuzzy, just kind of, I'm dating myself. Oh man. Okay. Bad analogy. But it really is just fine tuning when it comes down to it. You have to kind of just pick the things that work, discard the things that don't, and don't be afraid to scrap an idea if you have a better one. Like one of the things I love to do is I keep a little notebook, on my desk next to me sometimes. That like an idea will pop into my head and I'll just jot it down. Like, here's something that could happen. Or what if this person encountered this person from this universe? Like, you see that in comics, you see that in movies, people kind of doing these mashups and crossovers. And I think that cosplay has that opportunity to do it as well. It really, it's helping people kind of find an identity when they cosplay. Instead of being like one out of 1,000 divas from Overwatch or Deadpools. Yeah. Like suddenly now you're, I don't know, Space Marine diva, or you're ball gown diva.
Humbug diva.
Yeah.
It's all about being creative. Like, that's why I love designing my own cosplays, is because you have the room to be creative. You don't have to be spot on and get every last little detail of something. You have the room to make your own creative choices and really bring something to life that you're really passionate about.
So I guess we can open it up to questions and just kind of take them one at a time, and Ivy will eventually show up. You guys can ask her questions as well. I'm sure there's time.
Can you actually talk about the interplay between something you would make as an illustration and then how you would bring it into a practical effect, and then also how you might want to take it something from a practical effect, like an idea you might have, and then have you interpret that as an illustration for the design?
So you mean like how do you draw something that's ultimately going to end up having to be practical? Is that what
Yeah. How do you work with the interplay when you're designing stuff for cosplay? Because you're doing like the illustrations, and then how people might want to do that, like if they want to make like floating necromancer skulls or something like that.
Well, I mean, a lot of it is trial and error. It's practice. You start to learn where to draw the straps, where to draw the armor so that it sits in a way that's comfortable. I mean, we're used to games and comics being full of these characters that, they look great, but there's no way to really make it work. But there's workarounds. You can actually make it, you can kind of cheat it sometimes. And a lot of it is just, like I said, it's trial and error, it's practice. Just playing with when you do a design, okay, write down what worked, what didn't, what needed to be changed.
Yeah. Zach and I have both done a redesign of Raphael from Diablo. And one of the big problem pieces with Raphael is his shoulders don't function. If you move your shoulders, you're gonna like punch yourself in the head. And you just don't want that to happen. It's not comfortable. So like you have to think of creative ways. For me, I had to install different mechanisms and do magnets so it would move with my body, and then it would snap back into place when my shoulders were down. I still didn't move my shoulders as much as I would have liked to, but I made it work. I didn't do like exactly how Raphael's shoulders were, otherwise, I mean, I'm tiny compared to him, so it wouldn't work, but it's things like that that you have to kind of work around and think, how would this actually really work on a human body?
And I mean, Kelton, for example, did the male Kerrigan last year at BlizzCon, and like the wings, just to get that to work. Because I remember seeing pictures, I'm like, how is he going to do that? And
I hope you can see, but these are the wings extended.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. So, pass it around. But basically, that whole thing was like a suit made of polyfoam with latex skin, and I had wings that articulated so when I extended my arms, they would open up and then they would close. So things like that, rigging a costume, you have to take that into calculation when you were coming up with the designs, because things like I had to build these fiberglass cuffs underneath my suit, a fiberglass plate to sit on my back and have straps just to hold the wings underneath the suit. So all this mechanism stuff has to be put in perspective before you start working on the actual costume. Because if you think about doing it after, you're going to see the straps on the outside of your costume. You're not going to like how that works. So a lot of that is like a really big part of working on your cosplay.
And there's plenty of resources in the community. There's plenty of people who have already figured out the problems that you might be running into. So the best thing to do is just to look around and find people who have done something similar to what you're trying to do. If you want articulating wings, find somebody who's done it and contact them. Be like, how did you do this? How did you solve this problem? And you'd be amazed at how much money and time and anguish you can save yourself just asking questions.
Seriously, and there's certain people that make things. Like I have a friend in Seattle that he makes the base for doing articulated wings. And sometimes, supporting other cosplayers or artists in that sense to make a portion of your costume to help bring it to life. Because sometimes it's going to be cheaper for you that way than wasting all this money trying to do it yourself when it's maybe a pretty small part of your costume, and we all like to support each other in this community, so it's nice because there's a lot of resources out there.
Any other questions? Come on, guys. You got some time to fill. Right over there.
I guess I have two questions. So in terms of resources, like with other cosplayers, are there like certain forums or websites that you particularly like where people post a lot of ideas? And then I guess the second question is in terms of sourcing materials, are there any good like online stores or something like that you would recommend?
I guess I'll start with that. For me, it's generally people I meet, Google search, but there's a lot of people out there and you may not know that they exist, but if you do a lot of research, you'll eventually pop up to their page and you learn that, oh, they made this, and then they might have instructional videos. YouTube is great for that, obviously. And as far as picking resources, it's hard. It's always hard for me. Like, I search high and low on the internet sometimes. I will take really weird things that I buy off eBay and tear it apart and be like, this looks like this part. And it's, $5 online, so I'm gonna tear this apart and make it look like that. So you just really have to be creative with it. I do a lot of like hand dyeing and, a lot of times I can't find the right fabric. So you have to alter it and you have to like create a stamp to create the pattern. Or, you just really have to be creative with it and do research on other people because they always have ideas, and this community is very helpful with I'm always willing to answer people's questions about what I did and how I did it.
Yeah, there's a great site called the RPF forum.
Yeah.
It's a prop forum that people do tons of builds on that site. It's more prop making, armor building, but there's also tons of costuming and weathering tips you can learn from.
And from a concept art perspective, if you're trying to design something, there's a Facebook group called 10,000 Hours, and it's full of people who are concept artists and illustrators who are constantly bouncing ideas back and forth for original characters that they're doing, and they're looking for criticism and critique. And it's great to get on there and just show your stuff and say, what can I do to make this character more believable? What can I do to make it feel more real? And sometimes another reality that you have to consider, when you're designing something that nobody's ever seen before, the reality might be that there isn't any reference. You have to make the reference. And there's something kind of fun and pioneering about that, to just throw caution to the wind and be like, I'm going to do this because I feel like it's the right thing to do. And if it doesn't work out, it's a gamble. I learn and I do it differently next time. But sometimes it pays off, and it pays off in a huge way. And then suddenly you now see tons of other people doing things the way that you did them. And that's really satisfying as well. Ivy's here.
Hi. Sorry, I got lost. They sent me upstairs, and I was running upstairs. I'm here.
That turned out amazing, by the way.
It needs work. It's a work in progress. It's not
I love it.
100% by any means.
So this Bowser costume that Ivy's wearing is something that her and I worked on over the past 2 weeks. A lot of bouncing back and forth on this. And
On an insane deadline.
on an insane deadline.
But
Yes.
got that.
But this is an example of something that you can create if you collaborate with people and you're willing to just kind of go, okay, I trust you.
You want to step in?
Yes,
Show
please.
off.
Yes, stand up. Show them.
Oh my god.
Maybe Zach can talk about his design. Why he incorporated
Oh god, yeah. All right. So I mean, going back to what we're talking about, color scheme. All the colors that Bowser, has are represented. The reds and the greens and the yellows. The spiked bands are represented around the wrists and the elbow pieces. The shell texture. It's all there. It's I think, has anybody had any problems identifying what you were?
Not walking from here to there. This is the first time I walk out of my hotel room today. Yeah.
So you haven't hit your booth?
Nope.
Oh boy.
Not at all. I'm doing a signing in like the last hour of the day.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be doing that. But the shell I actually made over a year ago with the intent of doing a Bowser cosplay, and then just kind of put it away, put it back in my garage and let it sit there. And then when Zach and I were talking, I said, hey, I have a Bowser costume, and I do have the breastplate that my friend Jackie had sent me as a gift. Can we put certain elements of her design from the breastplate into the rest of it, and then I'll make the rest of the armor to go for it, or if we need to alter anything, we'll do that. And it worked out seamlessly, with the exception of, with anything armor related movements that, somewhat restricted to a degree. And then the funny thing was when he was sorting out what colors he was going to be using for it, we went back and forth for a couple of days on if I was going to actually dye my hair to those colors or not. And I finally said, go ahead and do the art with the hair color, because I'm going to do it. I'm just going to dye my hair. And it worked out.
You gotta work on the fly. You gotta be able to be like, okay, well, this is what it's gonna be. So, with that introduction, so we've been talking about what designer cosplay is, and why people seem to be interested in it, and why it's making such a splash in the cosplay community these days. Did you have anything to add on those topics?
Oh, I obsessed over Zach's work when I saw it online for the first time. I was actually a fan of his work for a bit. And I love the idea of taking a character and making it your own, or pulling certain elements of that character and then just creating this insane design based off of those things. And that's one thing that I've seen consistently with Zach's work. And it's also one of those reasons why I love working with other people, because when you get more than one mind involved, just the options on just being creative and making something completely new that no one's ever seen just expands, and amazing to create art with other people as opposed to like just.
Yeah, I mean, it's a collaboration is something that it's kind of a tightrope. It's like kind of like walking a tightrope. There's always balance that needs to be maintained, because every now and then you'll get some wrench in the gears that'll throw things off. Like, oh well, I can't use this material, or oh, this isn't going to work. This needs to be changed, and you kind of just have to adapt and wing it and change something that you may have liked about the design initially, because it either won't work or it just doesn't fit. But yeah, collaboration, like we said, it's something that it can really help kind of amp up your design. So if it's something that you're interested in, reach out to artists that you may know, personally even, and say, hey, you want to help me with this thing? You never know what kind of gem you're going to find out there who just has these amazing ideas. And also feel free to explore it yourself too. Like get some paper and pencil, and anybody can just kind of sit down and draw something, even if it doesn't end up looking exactly how you want it to initially, or like you said, fabric choices.
Another
Put a palette together.
Another great place to look for reference would be like Pinterest. Just put all these pictures together, make mood boards, and I use that a lot when I do research for characters. And yeah, I mean, you have YouTube now, but aside from that, there's also tons of books. Go to the library, look at books. I mean, for example, if you're doing something historically accurate, you want to make sure that you're being culturally appropriate. You don't want to do something that, you're doing a Chinese outfit, you don't want to put kimono sleeves on that, because, you're going to get a lot of flack put up in it. So always be culturally sensitive as well.
Yes, and the cosplay fan community is very, they're very quick to point out when you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
So, but you have to also kind of grow with the thick skin of that too.
Yeah, you really have to learn to just do things because you're passionate about it. With my mashups, the Assassin's Creed community, they're really harsh sometimes. They really sometimes hate my mashup. There's tons of people that love it, but there's always going to be people that don't appreciate it. And those are the things that you always have to ignore. If you're passionate about it, just do it. It doesn't matter what the naysayers think. I got a lot of crap with Assassin Link. I got a lot of crap with Assassin Kylo. And I've seen a lot of negative comments. And some of it's just because maybe they're jealous that they didn't think of it first. And there's all kinds of different reasons why people will naysay things. But if you're wanting to create something of your own, you should just do it, because it's what you're passionate about. And overall, there's always going to be more positive than negative. So.
Any other questions off the top?
Mine's for Kelton. Have you ever just basically done a makeup look that you loved so much that it ended up inspiring you to do an entire cosplay built around that makeup look?
I think that has never happened yet, but I have done illustrations where I'm like, wow, I need to make this. So I think, I guess that could be makeup, because makeup is basically like painting your face, so yeah. Sorry if that didn't really answer your question.
That works.
Could you talk more about iterative process when you mentioned that you sometimes have to do the back and forth and see what can actually work and not work? Could you give examples of the way that's worked for the creation of an illustration to the creation of something in a costume?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, iteration is vital to design, because we've talked about before, how you're like Kelton said, you're not gonna get the design right the first time. There's a lot of, and I know you said it as well, there's just a lot of mistakes that get made. Iteration helps you weed out what works and what doesn't. And in the illustration process, sometimes you have to line up 4 or 5 different examples of the same costume with slight variations to say, okay, well, compared to these other things, what works, what do you like, what don't you like? So another collaboration I did over a year ago was the Deathwing with Jessica Negri, and I did 4 different versions of it and said, okay, well, pick and choose the parts of these that you like or dislike, and we can incorporate everything you like and everything and kind of get rid of what you don't like. And that overall was just really well considered by the time we had kind of trimmed the fat away from it. And so from an illustration standpoint, yeah, you definitely need to do doodles. Just, it doesn't have to be polished, refined illustrations or drawings. Just get the idea out there, well enough to represent it in a way that you can consider, okay, well, how will this function? How will this work in a costume? How can I build this?
For me, because I'm not talented like this guy over here, I'm not a sketcher. Well, not in that sense. I don't really sketch. I think about my ideas a lot of time. I collect a lot of reference material. I print out things. And I have a lot of things that I pull from. And for me, I kind of do my first mock-up in like scrap fabric or whatever scraps I have, because for me, I usually visually have it in my head, but I can't visually put it down on paper. And we all can't necessarily have, yeah, you can do a little doodle, and I do that sometimes, but for me, it's always great to work on your design with scraps that you have, so you're not wasting expensive material, and then you can kind of get the shapes down and figure it out and create a pattern of your own, and then go from there.
Yeah. Well, Ivy, how did our iteration process go?
Well, one, we had a very, very, very tight time crunch on it, but it was one of those things where, I mentioned, I like these elements, I want to make sure that there's, the wristbands and the choker thing, and, you have to have the shawl, all those, like, base components, but also to, make him fit to the female figure. And there was really not much reference out there for it aside from just photos of Bowser.
There's not much to work with.
That's literally it. I think maybe there's two other cosplayers that have done Bowser.
Yeah.
But we wanted to go like insane with armor because you are you.
There was a lot of like live resketching.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, lots of Skype calls, lots of, hey, well, why don't you add this? Well, we're on the time. He's telling me we're on the time crunch. So are you sure that you want to add that? Are you sure you want to do this? Like, yeah, just go for it. Go for it. I'll do it. And before you know it, we have this insane design. We went through a few redesigns of like the skirt part of the costume. A few changes here and there, but all in all, I'm very happy with what we came up with. On my end, much like her, I like to kind of design something as I go. I have that idea in my head, and I will have a reference that I'll look at. But with for example, Magneto that I did, Neil Flutter did the design for that one, and as I was making it, I wanted to add more to it, and I started adding more to my breastplate, and more here and more there, and before long, the end result was something that spoke to me for that character. I ended up making the upper part of the breastplate the outline of the shape of his helmet. And I make those changes as I go along making it, and like she said, it's better to go ahead and do your mock-ups and things like that. On my end, I just dive right in. It's not necessarily the best thing, and it does cause a lot of waste. It doesn't work out. But that's just my own process and how it's always worked well for me, especially under pressure. I'm notorious for making things like last minute, like today.
Any other questions? Florida?
Do you find that you, when you're creating things, do you create patterns, like for sewing and things like that? Do you create your own? Do you take current ones, modify them, that sort of thing?
I modify a lot of patterns. I've never used an actual full pattern ever from anything, but I make my own patterns, and I also, if I have a pattern laying around that I'm like, that's kind of the shape, I'll kind of take it and just be like, I'm going to modify this. Because it's a really good reference, especially when you're first getting into sewing, to have those around. There's, a lot of store-bought patterns, or their shapes don't really fit most of our bodies, so you have to alter them anyways. So, yeah, they're a really good reference to have around.
And for myself, I just, I draft them off of my little dummy thing, and they fit my body. I don't buy patterns because, like what you're saying, it's not gonna fit me. So I will do that. I'll grab articles of clothing that fit me and use that as a base for certain pieces of costume pieces.
Yeah, and you can make your own like duct tape dummies to your body shape, and those are great reference because then you can just craft the pattern right on the dummy.
Back there.
How would one got?
I'm sorry.
How would one be got? Is it just wrapping yourself up in duct
So
tape?
basically, you put an old pair of pants, old t-shirt, and then wrap over that with duct tape. No, cling wrap first, and then duct tape, and then after that you cut it up, and then you tape it back together and stuff with the newspaper or whatever.
And always have a friend to help you.
Yeah. And a young kid as well.
Yeah, I don't have to deal with patterns very much. Yeah. What I would say is, though, from my end, it's important to know armor and weaponry, or if you're doing clothing as well. It's how it sits, how this material will sit, how it functions. If you're doing armor, study real armor, study where it connects, how it moves, what plates, need to be able to move and slide and articulate. And a lot of the times, from everything I've heard from people that I've worked with, when they follow the strapping or the little rivets or the things that I build into the design, when they follow that, when they're building it, it's a far more comfortable costume because it moves the way it's supposed to. And that goes for clothing as well. When you're designing something in fabric, know what's going to be comfortable. Understand, based on researching it a little bit, how to construct a dress, how to construct a coat, how to know when fabric is going to stay where you want it to, or whether you have to design something that's going to hold it in place.
Going back to that with fabric, a lot of times when you see artwork or you see games, the way that, for example, if you have like Hanzo from Overwatch, where he has this ribbon that's always like fluttering in the wind, you can't possibly, if you make it just from fabric, it's just going to be limp and sit there. So what I like to do sometimes to create movement is I actually sew armature wire down the lengths of the ribbon so then I can pose it for pictures. If, for example, there's no wind in the area and you're shooting underground. That's a trick that I put in a lot of things. For example, I did a makeup of a Chinese goddess based on for this thing I did. And she has this levitating fabric that goes around her arms. What I did is I put armature wire in there so that way it looks like it's sitting upright. If I had just done fabric, it would never hold that shape. Any more questions?
Well, then another question on motion. When you're doing the illustration for the design, do you also incorporate those in possible ways and poses that the cosplayers will need, like for sitting, standing, different poses, different actions that they'll take, etc.?
Well, when I am designing something in an illustration, I really approach it more like a concept artist does, where it's more about initially showing all the pieces in a very kind of straightforward, static way, so that people can get a sense of the silhouette and the shape and how it's supposed to look. But I mean, you do have to think about when you're illustrating it, or when you're designing it. How it will move, and part of that's just experience. It's just doing it over and over again until you understand how something is supposed to move. But from an illustration standpoint, like I said, when you design it initially, you don't actually. It serves you better to draw the concept straightforward in a way that you can understand it above anything else. Because the tendency is that a lot of people are like, oh, I want to do this cool dynamic pose in this illustration. It's like, well, that's great, but it may not fully represent how it's going to move or how it's going to sit, and it may just end up causing you more grief than you really need to when you're then trying to translate that into a physical form. So
You always want to have multiple angles. Just like when you cosplay, you want to have different angles of the costume so that you know what goes where and how that works. Not
Yes.
just one front-on view, because the back might be completely different.
yeah, totally, and even past that, like understand the shapes that you're drawing too. Understand the shapes that you're creating and designing, and how they look in full 3D. Like, if somebody were to ask you, hey, can you draw this from the side? Can you show me what this looks like from the back? You need to be able to understand your shape that you've drawn well enough to be able to do that. Because if you're just drawing it straight on, sometimes you're not considering the other side. And that's when you run into trouble with, okay, well, how do I move this? Because the shape doesn't work for whatever reason.
Yeah. Another great resource for if you don't know how to pattern, there's also Pepakura, which is like 3D patterns. Like sometimes you can rip models from games, print out the patterns, and then you can put them back together in foam or whatever, and then cover them in resin if you want a solid piece.
I would imagine that there's probably a moment in every cosplay process where it's at that moment of despair or triumph when you realize, like, this is gonna happen, this is happening, or, oh my god, I think I just wasted my time. How do you know when you've reached that moment? How do you know it's here? And is there a checklist that you run through in your head of like asking yourself these questions, like, in order to determine whether to move forward or whether to give up?
It's usually when tears start happening. Mental breakdowns. I've had a few projects that I just ended up not doing because I didn't like the paint job, or I didn't, or a lot of times it's just I forego certain parts, and I think, like I'll add it later, I'll fix it later. I do try to have a checklist, but I'm not the best organized person ever. But it's so helpful to have a checklist of everything you need to do, and time management. Time management is a huge thing, especially if you're running on a schedule.
Yeah. That was my moment about an hour ago, an hour and a half ago. I messaged Zach and I told him, I didn't get the shoulder armor done. I didn't get my prop done, and the rest of the armor is not exactly at where I know it can be. Should I wear it? Should I still wear it? Or no? He's like, no, go ahead and wear it. But prior to that, I had a conversation with my sister about how, I want to wear it, but it's not what I wanted it to be, and I don't know, and maybe I shouldn't, but then that means I wasted the last 3 days without sleep for nothing. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to wear it and be happy with it for where it is now, and then work on it some more and build on it and refine it, add the other elements to it. With my schedule, I travel 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks every month, so I'm gone most of the year. I was out for about 2.5 weeks, and now I'm traveling back for another 7, with maybe 1 or 2 days home. So my schedule is very intense. So for this costume, I brought everything from home that I needed to make in the hotel room. So this was made at San Diego Comic-Con. Which is, it's insane and it's crazy, but it's one of those things that, Zach and I had this idea and we wanted to do it, and for me, I think it was definitely worth all the lack of sleep and everything.
And it doesn't need to be the last time you wear it.
Oh,
Like,
no,
that's the thing, it's like, it's never your final form.
Oh,
You can
yeah,
always
tonight I'm
continue
working on
and
the
change
prop.
it. Right, see?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I figured, I didn't get to walk the floor much today. I'm only signing for about an hour, so I'm gonna wear this one again tomorrow and actually get some mileage off of it, work on my shoulders tonight, and hopefully have those done by tomorrow.
Here's a good example. There was a girl that I worked with. Her name is Nicole, and she's amazing. And last year at San Diego Comic-Con, she wore a costume that I had designed for her. It was a female version of Varian Rin. And I loved it then. I thought it was great. But then she stopped by Ivy's booth when I was there earlier today, and she had learned some things. She'd done some other costumes, and she'd remade like 90% of the costume. And she came by, and I'm going to post pictures of it on my social media later, because I took some pictures. It's amazing. But she, just the amount of skill that she learned in just a year, she redid it. She did the costume over again. She's like, I'm not satisfied with this. I'm going to do it again. And it totally paid off. So never feel afraid to do that. Like, if you learn something new, or you learn a new technique, or you want to change something up, go, okay, well, I can remake this a piece at a time if I need to, until it's exactly where I want it to be.
Any more questions? Oh,
I have a question for each of you. What is the most satisfying part of the process for you?
seeing it all put together, wearing it, or even seeing it on someone you designed it for. It's just super satisfying because you're like, I put all that work into research, it's coming up with this design, and then made this, so it's like it's done. You know?
Same thing, like seeing it all put together and like seeing photos later and being like, I did that, I managed it, you know, like it's a relief. Part of the creative process is part of what I love too, when I'm not in panic mode. When it's panic mode, it's not so enjoyable.
Definitely seeing the photos, especially, you know, if you're walking around and there's like little kids that recognize your character, things like that, like when you see their faces light up, that's definitely one of those things that for me, I definitely get fulfillment from. And just tooling away at making the costume is always something that is, even with this, because for me, I work well under pressure. I love that pressure, I live for that. So this whole process with it, as stressful as it was definitely something that I love. Yeah.
Well, for me, since I don't do any of the crafting, I can't craft. So for me, like, I have to enter it a different way, and I cannot describe the feeling of euphoria I get when I finally see something that a few months prior was only in my head, suddenly now is a physical thing. Like, that's kind of the whole reason I want to, you know, do concept art for video games, you know, someday, or you know, for film, is that eventually you get to see the thing that was just in your head. You were the only one in the world at one point that knew what that thing looked like. And suddenly now there it is and everybody can see it. It's this kind of amazing, almost feeling of just spreading like a virus. Just like now everybody's infected with this concept, with this idea that was in your head, you know, alone. And it's just, there's been a couple times where I've seen somebody in costume that I designed for the first time, and I've literally fallen to my knees, just being, like, just being overwhelmed, and it's amazing. So that's where it's. Get another question over there real quick. Probably.
Oh, kind of a similar question. On a less technical side, what do you enjoy most about cosplaying? Like on a personal level, do you find that it makes you more confident, or do you just like the escapist aspect? Like, what is it that you love?
For me, it's definitely the confidence it's given me. Before cosplay, I was just really just reserved. I didn't have any self-esteem. Yeah, I wasn't in the happiest of places, but when I started cosplaying and just meeting others in the community and just immersing myself in the culture, you know, just wearing a costume, being Wonder Woman for a day, or you know, any of the characters, for me was something that was incredibly empowering. And I thought, you know what, if these characters, even if they're fictitious, their strength and they're strong and they're powerful, or you know, they're these iconic figures for women, you know, any of those things, you know, why can't I feel strong? Why can't I feel powerful? Why can't I feel confident? Why can't I feel all of these things? And cosplay has given me that. You know, it's given me a better outlook on life. It's made me feel great about myself, and that's why I keep doing this. You know, I love it, and I love now being able to share that with others as well. You know, through that creation process, through, you know, bumping into someone that's dressed up as the same character as you, and you guys both get to talk about why you love this character, or what is it that you like, or what don't you like, or oh, this, you know, this issue of this comic was awesome that this character was in, and things like that. Just being able to have those connections with others is something that I think is just really beautiful and unique to this culture.
For me, it's the creative process. I love learning new things, and with cosplay, you're constantly learning. And on top of it, then you meet other people, and you learn things from them, and you share tips and tricks, and it builds this source of community that I haven't felt anywhere else. So that's what I love most about doing it, is just being able to be free in my creativity for sure.
Well, for me, I just like the constant challenge of creating a new outfit. Every outfit I do pushes me in a different direction. I learn new things, like maybe I want to learn how to improve my sculpting while making casting skills, or improve my sewing, creating interesting silhouettes with just fabric. So for me, it's all about how I can challenge myself as an artist and grow with each project that I do.
And I think that's about the amount of time that we have. They were showing us 5 minutes, about 4 minutes.
Can you tell everybody where to find you online?
Oh, yeah.
You can find me at Kelton FX. I have a couple of cards up here if you want to grab it on your way out. It's just Kelton FX. I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
I am Zach Fischer Illustration on Facebook. I've got a Patreon, an Instagram, Twitter. They're all connected to Facebook. You can find them there.
I'm Deela Designs on pretty much social media. I have my Etsy stores under Deela Designs, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I also have business cards if anybody wants any.
Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, I'm by Doomkitty, YouTube by Doomkitty Official. I think that's everything.
And I know I will. Maybe you guys will want to just kind of hang out outside for a little bit in case anybody has additional questions. But
You should try to ask what we have to say.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.